Do you ever wonder about the quiet ones? The people who move through the world unseen, their contributions overlooked, their very presence often forgotten? What hidden depths lie beneath the surface of those we dismiss, those we label as insignificant, the invisible ones among us? Imagine for a moment a life lived on the fringes of recognition, not by choice, but by circumstance, by the willful blindness of those who should have seen you clearest. This was the silent existence of Samantha Cruz, a young woman from Fresno, California, whose days were spent in the rhythmic, mundane hum of a supermarket cashier's lane, her hands deftly scanning barcodes, her smile polite but rarely met with genuine warmth. At 29, Samantha carried the weight of a peculiar family burden. She was the designated ghost, the forgotten relative in a sprawling, boisterous, and often cruel family. Her parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, and cousins moved through their lives with an air of entitled superiority, their conversations a constant symphony of self-aggrandizement and casual disdain for anyone they deemed lesser. Samantha, always neat, always punctual, always willing to lend a quiet hand, found herself systematically erased from their narratives, her opinions unheard, her milestones uncelebrated. They spoke over her, looked through her, and when forced to acknowledge her, did so with a thinly veiled condescension that felt colder than any outright insult. Her small apartment, kept meticulously clean, was her sanctuary, a stark contrast to the sprawling, opulent homes of her relatives, purchased and maintained with the generous, if often misguided, financial support of her wealthy grandfather, Elias Thorne. Elias, a formidable businessman in his prime, had built an empire from the ground up, a legacy of factories and investments that now supported the lavish lifestyles of his descendants. Yet, despite his vast wealth and his apparent doting on his other grandchildren, even he seemed to have forgotten Samantha, or so the family whispered, justifying their own neglect. She never complained, never demanded attention, simply continued her work, living a life of quiet dignity and unwavering kindness, a virtue lost on most of her kin. Her worn but immaculately clean cashier's uniform was a symbol of her honest labor, her clear eyes holding a wisdom beyond her years, a silent testament to trials born with grace. The family, a constellation of flashy cars and designer clothes, saw only her low-wage job, never the steadfast heart that beat beneath it, never the quiet strength that allowed her to endure their continuous, subtle slights. They saw a reflection of their own disdain, a convenient prop to highlight their perceived superiority, rather than a human being of profound worth. And so, the years slipped by, marking Samantha not with grand achievements or public recognition, but with the quiet accumulation of forgotten moments, unacknowledged efforts, and the profound, almost aching invisibility that had become her constant companion. This was her reality, until the day the world shifted on its axis, and the very foundation of her family's carefully constructed illusions began to crumble. The news of grandfather Elias Thorne's passing swept through the family like a cold, calculating wind, each gust carrying not the grief of loss, but the eager rustle of anticipation. The man who had shaped their destinies with his immense wealth, the patriarch whose every whim had been indulged by his fawning children and grandchildren, was gone. His funeral was, as expected, a grand spectacle. A meticulously choreographed display of ostentatious mourning and performative grief, designed more to impress the community and each other than to honor the memory of the deceased. Floral arrangements rivaled small gardens, their intoxicating scent attempting to mask the underlying scent of ambition that permeated the air. Designer suits and dresses, worn with an air of cultivated solemnity, belied the restless, avaricious gleam in their wearers' eyes. Samantha, as always, was a ghost at the feast, a silent observer amidst the cacophony of their feigned sorrow. She arrived quietly, dressed in her best, simple black dress, her face etched with a genuine, if private, sadness. Elias, despite his distant demeanor and the family's narrative of his detachment, had once, long ago, offered her a small, knowing smile. A quiet gesture of understanding that had always lingered in her memory, a flicker of warmth in an otherwise cold existence. She had held on to that fleeting moment, a secret solace. Now, standing near the back, she watched her aunts, uncles, and cousins perform their roles, their hushed whispers, not of fond memories, but of impending inheritance. He was so frail, Aunt Beatrice murmured, dabbing her dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. I hope he settled everything properly. Cousin Mark, preening in his tailored suit, scoffed. Properly? With his fortune, it's about time we all got what we deserved. Their conversations were a crude tapestry of speculation and entitlement, each thread woven with a desperate hope for a larger slice of Elias's pie. They reminisced about expensive gifts, lavish vacations paid for by their grandfather, never about the man himself, his wisdom, or his values. Samantha heard it all, her heart a quiet drum of disappointment. She saw the calculating glances exchanged between siblings, the barely concealed rivalry over seating arrangements, the subtle jostling for proximity to the lawyer, Mr. Harrison, who stood sternly by the coffin, his face impassive. The family's drama was a familiar, depressing play she had witnessed countless times, but this act felt different, charged with a palpable tension. As they gathered in the grand living room of Elias's sprawling estate after the burial, the air crackled with a desperate energy. The ancestral portraits on the walls seemed to look down with silent judgment, their painted eyes reflecting the anxious, expectant faces below. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, a sound that cut through the strained silence like a razor. He held a thick, sealed envelope, the very symbol of their fate. Samantha sat on a small, uncomfortable chair in the corner, almost invisible behind a potted fern, her hands clasped in her lap. She expected nothing, hoped for nothing, beyond the quiet dignity of a respectful presence. The room was a pressure cooker, the atmosphere thick with greed and anticipation, all eyes fixed on the man about to unlock their future. They were a pack of wolves, barely containing their hunger, ready to tear into the spoils. And Samantha, the quiet lamb, was merely present for the show, a forgotten footnote in their grand narrative of inheritance. The rustle of the thick parchment as Mr. Harrison carefully broke the seal was the only sound in the opulent, tension-filled room. Every eye was fixed on him, a collective breath held captive in anticipation. The lawyer, a man whose reputation for meticulousness was as formidable as Elias Thorne's empire, adjusted his spectacles, his gaze sweeping across the expectant faces, pausing for just a fraction of a second on Samantha, almost imperceptibly, before returning to the document. He began to read, his voice clear and resonant, detailing the traditional initial clauses, the formal identification of the deceased, the designation of executors, the preliminary instructions. The family members shifted impatiently, their faces betraying their eagerness for the financial specifics, the numbers, the assets. Then came the section that made the air in the room palpably colder. To my beloved son Thomas, I leave the sum of $1, as a token of the value he placed on true family. To my daughter Eleanor I bequeath the antique locket she admired, hoping it reminds her of what she lost. A gasp rippled through the room. Thomas, Elias's eldest son, turned a sickly shade of green, his jaw dropping. Eleanor clutched at her chest, her eyes wide with disbelief and outrage. Mr. Harrison continued, his voice unwavering, listing off similar, symbolic, almost insulting bequests to various other family members, each one a thinly veiled rebuke, a pointed commentary on their character flaws. A tarnished silver spoon for the perpetually greedy, a broken watch for the consistently late, a single, withered rose for the one who had let love wither. The collective shock gave way to a murmur of indignant protest, growing louder with each sentence. This is preposterous, someone hissed. He's gone mad. Aunt Carol shrieked, her carefully composed grief shattering into a mosaic of fury. This cannot be his true will. He would never. He loved us. But Mr. Harrison merely paused, his gaze firm, silencing them with a look. He cleared his throat once more, then read the final, most impactful clause, his voice rising in volume, resonating through the stunned silence. And to my granddaughter, Samantha Cruz, who, through all the years of neglect and dismissal, remained steadfast in her kindness, her honesty, and her unwavering spirit, I bequeath the entirety of my estate, all properties, businesses, investments, and personal assets. She alone has proven herself worthy of this legacy, not just of wealth, but of responsibility and true leadership. The words hung in the air, heavy with consequence. A stunned, disbelieving silence descended upon the room, so profound that the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall seemed deafening. Then, a cacophony erupted. "Samantha?" Uncle David roared, lunging forward, his face contorted in a mask of apoplectic rage. "That little cashier? She gets everything? This is an outrage. This is a fraud." Cousin Jessica, her eyes narrowed with a venomous fury, pointed a trembling finger at Samantha. "She manipulated him. She must have. She's always been sly, hiding in the shadows." Samantha, still in her corner, felt a tremor run through her. Her heart pounded, a drumbeat of disbelief, then a slow, deep surge of something she hadn't felt in a very long time: validation. Her eyes, usually downcast, lifted, meeting the gaze of the furious, betrayed faces around her. She didn't speak, didn't react with triumph, only a quiet, profound understanding of the monumental shift that had just occurred. The invisible girl was no longer invisible. She was now, undeniably, everything. The shock quickly curdled into a bitter cocktail of disbelief and unbridled fury among Elias's family. The room erupted into a chaotic scene, a maelstrom of accusations swirling around Samantha. "This is a forged document." Aunt Beatrice screeched, her voice shrill with indignation. "There's no way. Elias loved us. We were his blood." Uncle David pounded his fist on a mahogany table, making the antique vases clatter. "She's a fraudster, a gold digger. My father would never disinherit his own children for her." Cousin Jessica's accusations were particularly cruel, dripping with long-held resentment. "She always played the victim, the quiet one, but I knew she was cunning. She must have wormed her way into his mind in his old age, poisoned him against us." The very idea of Samantha, the overlooked cashier, inheriting such a fortune was an affront to their carefully constructed reality, a direct assault on their sense of inherent entitlement. They saw it not as a just redistribution, but as a malicious theft, an inexplicable betrayal. Mr. Harrison, however, remained a stoic bulwark against their storm. He held up a hand, his expression firm, cutting through the din. "Ladies and gentlemen, this will has been thoroughly vetted. It is Elias Thorne's final, undisputed testament. It was written and signed months ago, witnessed by reputable individuals, and confirmed by medical professionals as a decision made with full mental capacity. Your accusations are baseless and, frankly, insulting to Mr. Thorne's memory." He then delivered the crushing blow that silenced them momentarily. "Furthermore, Mr. Thorne anticipated your reactions. He instructed me, upon your inevitable questioning of his sanity, or your attempts to contest this will, to play a series of video recordings he made himself." A large screen descended from the ceiling, and the room was plunged into a tense silence as Elias Thorne's face, older and thinner than they remembered, but with eyes still sharp and piercing, appeared before them. His voice, strong and unwavering, filled the room. "My dear family," he began, a hint of sorrow in his tone, "you will no doubt be furious, you will feel betrayed. But know this: every decision I have made, every penny I have earned, has been with the intention of fostering genuine character, not merely accumulating wealth. For years, I watched. I watched you squander opportunities, not just financially, but morally. I saw your disdain for those less fortunate, your endless appetite for more, your complete disregard for the quiet virtues. I saw your casual cruelty towards Samantha, her unwavering kindness, her tireless work ethic, her humility. The video continued, showing snippets Elias had secretly filmed. Cousin Mark dismissing a homeless man with a sneer, Aunt Eleanor berating a sales clerk, Uncle David refusing to help a neighbor in need. All juxtaposed with silent footage of Samantha quietly assisting an elderly shopper, spending her meager lunch break volunteering at a local shelter, or simply offering a genuine, empathetic smile to a struggling colleague. The dramatic irony was palpable, the family's faces blanching as their private moments of selfishness and callousness were broadcast for all to see, undeniable proof of their character, or lack thereof. The accusations died on their lips, replaced by shame, disbelief, and a chilling recognition of the depth of Elias's long-term observation. The unraveling had begun, not just of the will, but of the very lies they had told themselves for decades. Grandfather Elias Thorne's video message continued, his voice resonating through the stunned silence of the room, each word a hammer blow against the family's shattered illusions. You believed my wealth was a bottomless well for your whims, a prize for simply existing. But true legacy, my dear family, is not measured in dollars, but in the enduring spirit of human kindness, in integrity, and in the unwavering commitment to a principled life. He explained that the will was not merely a distribution of assets, but a carefully constructed, multi-layered directive, a final, profound lesson. The estate, the businesses, the investments, they are not simply yours to spend or sell. They are to be used to restore what has been broken, to heal what has been neglected, and to invest in the future of this community, which you have so carelessly ignored. He then detailed specific stipulations that sent further waves of shock through the room. Certain properties were designated to be converted into affordable housing, not sold for profit. The Thorne Industries factories, which some family members had wanted to offshore for cheaper labor, were to be revitalized with ethical labor practices and community-focused initiatives. A substantial portion of the liquid assets was earmarked for the establishment of a foundation dedicated to education and social justice, to be managed with complete transparency. And overseeing it all, managing every aspect, every intricate detail, was Samantha. Samantha, Elias said, his eyes softening as he spoke her name, is the only one among you who possesses the moral compass, the quiet strength, and the uncorrupted heart required to carry out this vision. She has never asked for anything, yet she has always given. She has faced your dismissiveness with grace, your indifference with fortitude. She understands the true value of hard work, of empathy, and of community. She is the true heir to my values, not just my wealth. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, then stepped forward, his voice reinforcing the deceased's intentions. Mr. Thorne was deeply disappointed by the family's focus on materialism and their lack of compassion. He saw how their pursuit of superficial gain had led to a disregard for the very people and principles that built his empire. He observed Samantha for many years, witnessing her quiet acts of charity, her genuine interactions with strangers, her unwavering dedication to her modest life, despite the temptation of what she could have demanded. He gestured to the stunned family members, some now openly weeping, not from grief, but from a profound sense of loss, betrayal, and, for a few, the dawning shame of their own behavior. He structured this will to force a reckoning, to compel a transformation. This is not about revenge, but about redemption. It is about demanding accountability and fostering true growth, not just financial, but personal and societal. The path forward will be challenging, demanding genuine effort and a profound shift in perspective from all involved. The realization settled over the family like a shroud. This was not just about money, it was about a legacy of character, a profound rejection of their entire way of life. And Samantha, the invisible girl, was now the unlikely, undeniable steward of that challenging, transformative vision. She was given not just an inheritance, but a sacred mandate to fix what the family had broken, to restore the very soul of the Thorne name. Samantha stood amidst the ruins of her family's expectations, the palpable hostility in the room almost suffocating. The reality of the inheritance, of the monumental task laid before her, began to sink in, heavy as stone. It wasn't just money, it was a crusade, a blueprint for redemption that she, the quiet cashier, was now charged with executing. She felt overwhelmed, a small boat thrust into a vast, tempestuous ocean. The eyes of her furious family members bored into her, accusing, resentful, some even tearful with self-pity. "You can't do this, Samantha." Aunt Eleanor pleaded, her voice laced with desperation. "You don't know anything about managing an empire. You're a cashier, for heaven's sake." Cousin Mark scoffed. "She'll ruin everything. She'll run it into the ground. And then what? We'll all be left with nothing." Their words were designed to undermine her, to sow seeds of doubt, to strip away the fragile confidence that was just beginning to bloom within her. They tried to belittle her experience, her intelligence, her very right to stand where she stood. But as their angry words washed over her, Samantha found a quiet wellspring of strength rising within her. She recalled the fleeting moments of connection she had shared with her grandfather, a shared quiet smile over a crossword puzzle, his unexpected gift of a worn but cherished book on ethical business practices, a subtle nod of approval when she had once, as a child, stood up for a bullied classmate. He had seen her, truly seen her, even when no one else did. He had cultivated a quiet trust in her, recognizing the integrity that had been her guiding star. This wasn't about revenge, she realized. It was about proving her grandfather's faith in her, about honoring his vision. It was about showing them, and herself, that true worth wasn't measured by wealth or social standing, but by character. She looked at Mr. Harrison, her eyes clear, a flicker of resolve hardening her soft features. "I understand the magnitude of this task, Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice quiet but firm, resonating with an unfamiliar authority. "And I accept it. My grandfather believed in me. I will not let him down." Her words hung in the air, a silent challenge to the chaos around her. The family continued their protests, their voices rising in a desperate chorus, but something had shifted within Samantha. She had spent her life accepting their dismissals, their slights, their invisibility cloak. Now, with her grandfather's powerful validation, she was ready to shed it. The burden was immense, yes, but it was also a liberation. It was her moment to step into the light, to claim her power, not for personal gain, but for the profound purpose her grandfather had entrusted to her. The quiet girl was no longer merely enduring, she was preparing to lead. With Mr. Harrison's unwavering support and the irrefutable directives of Elias Thorne's will, Samantha began the formidable task of reclamation. Her first actions were precise, deliberate, and undeniably unsettling for the rest of the family. The will mandated an immediate independent audit of all family finances that had been managed through Thorne Industries, revealing years of lavish expenses, questionable investments, and outright embezzlement of company funds for personal gain. Uncle David, who had overseen the family accounts, turned pale when the initial reports came in, showing how he had siphoned off millions for his private ventures. Aunt Eleanor, who had received a generous monthly stipend, was confronted with proof that she had diverted funds meant for community initiatives into her own luxury shopping sprees. Cousin Mark, whose startup had been secretly propped up by Thorne Capital, found his enterprise bankrupt as Samantha cut off the illicit cash flow. "This is an attack on our family," Uncle David bellowed, his face red with indignation during a tense meeting in Elias's old study, now officially Samantha's domain. "You are ruining us." Samantha, seated behind Elias's massive mahogany desk, met his gaze unflinchingly. "No, Uncle. Grandfather's will is not ruining you. It is exposing what you have already ruined. The will states that funds diverted from Thorne Industries for personal, non-business use must be repaid. The company's health and its commitment to ethical practices were paramount to grandfather. Her voice was steady, calm, betraying none of the internal tremors she might have felt. She wasn't acting out of vengeance, but a cool, unyielding sense of justice. She recalled Elias's words in the video: integrity, accountability. These were not empty pronouncements to her. The family attempted every tactic: emotional blackmail, legal threats, desperate pleas. Aunt Beatrice wept dramatically, claiming destitution. Cousin Jessica spread vicious rumors about Samantha's supposed manipulative nature. But Samantha, armed with the precise language of the will and Mr. Harrison's legal expertise, remained impervious. She systematically began the process of reallocating assets, redirecting funds from frivolous family expenditures to the community projects and ethical business practices Elias had envisioned. She shut down a luxurious family retreat that had been hemorrhaging money and announced plans to convert it into a vocational training center. She ordered the sale of unnecessary luxury vehicles and art collections to fund the new foundation. The family members, accustomed to living off the fat of Elias's land, were now being forced to reckon with their own financial recklessness and moral failings. The confrontation was not just about money, it was about the fundamental clash between their entitlement and Samantha's unwavering commitment to her grandfather's true legacy. Each step she took was a symbolic reclamation, not just of wealth, but of the very values Elias Thorne had sought to preserve, proving that a quiet girl could wield immense power, not through aggression, but through principle. The upheaval Samantha initiated was not merely financial, it was a profound, seismic shift in the very fabric of the Thorne family's identity and their place within the community. Guided by the granular detail of Elias's will and her own unshakable moral compass, Samantha began to rebuild, brick by brick, foundation by new foundation. The former family retreat, once a playground for the privileged, was indeed transformed. Under Samantha's diligent oversight, it became the Elias Thorne Community Skills Center, offering free vocational training in trades and digital literacy for the underserved youth and displaced workers of Fresno. She personally oversaw the renovation, ensuring the spaces were welcoming, modern, and efficient. The community, initially wary of another empty promise from the wealthy Thorne family, watched with cautious optimism as Samantha, often seen on-site in work clothes, spoke directly with prospective students and local leaders, her approach refreshingly genuine. The Thorne Industries factories, which had been slowly decaying under the previous management's neglect, saw a resurgence. Samantha reinvested in new, sustainable technologies, ensuring fair wages and excellent working conditions for the employees, many of whom had been laid off by her family in previous cost-cutting measures. She mandated transparency, inviting local union representatives and community advocates to observe the changes, effectively re-establishing trust. My grandfather believed in the dignity of labor and the strength of local communities, Samantha explained in a press conference, her voice now carrying a quiet authority that captivated the room. This is not just about profit, it's about purpose. This radical shift resonated deeply within the community, earning Samantha a growing respect that starkly contrasted with the Thorne family's historical reputation for aloofness and exploitation. Meanwhile, the family itself continued to reel. Some family members, like Uncle David and Aunt Eleanor, remained stubbornly hostile, clinging to their resentment and accusations. They tried to organize a counter-movement, spreading rumors, attempting to discredit Samantha in private circles. But their efforts largely failed. The community had witnessed Elias's video, and Samantha's actions spoke louder than their embittered whispers. Other, younger cousins, however, began to show signs of internal conflict. Witnessing Samantha's quiet integrity, her unwavering dedication, and the visible positive impact she was making, a few started to question their own upbringing and values. Cousin Sarah, initially one of Jessica's loudest accusers, tentatively approached Samantha, offering to volunteer at the Skills Center. Samantha, without a word of reproach for past wrongs, simply gave her a task, treating her with the same quiet respect she offered everyone. Samantha was not hoarding the wealth. She was deploying it, purposefully, ethically, and with a profound understanding of its true potential as a tool for betterment. She was proving her grandfather's wisdom, not through words, but through an undeniable, tangible transformation that extended far beyond the family mansion, rebuilding trust and respect where once there was only cynicism and greed. As the months turned into a year, the transformation under Samantha's stewardship was undeniable, profound, and visible to all. The Elias Thorne Community Skills Center became a beacon of hope in Fresno, churning out graduates with in-demand skills, many of whom quickly found employment, revitalizing local businesses and lifting families out of poverty. Thorne Industries, under new, ethical leadership, flourished, its renewed commitment to its workforce and sustainable practices drawing positive national attention and new, conscious investors. Samantha, once the invisible cashier, was now a prominent figure, recognized and respected, invited to speak at community events and economic forums. Her humility, however, remained untouched by her newfound status. She still dressed simply, spoke plainly, and treated everyone with the same earnest consideration she always had. The family's perception of her underwent a slow, painful, but ultimately necessary recalibration. For many, the initial shock and outrage had faded, replaced by grudging respect, then genuine admiration, and for some, even a profound sense of shame for their past behavior. Uncle David, stripped of his lavish lifestyle and forced to take a managerial position within one of Thorne's less profitable subsidiaries, slowly began to understand the value of honest work and true accountability. He often found himself observing Samantha from a distance, seeing not the cashier but a formidable leader whose actions commanded respect. Aunt Eleanor, witnessing the positive impact of the Skills Center on families she knew, started discreetly donating her time, realizing that true fulfillment came from contribution, not consumption. The most remarkable shift was in cousin Jessica. Her initial venom had been a desperate clinging to a dying way of life. But as she watched Samantha operate with such grace and principle, and as her own financial privileges dwindled, she was forced to confront the emptiness of her own existence. One afternoon she approached Samantha, not with an accusation, but with a tentative apology. "Samantha," she began, her voice raw with emotion. I was wrong. About everything. About you, about grandfather. I never saw what was truly important. Can you ever forgive me?" Samantha looked at her cousin, her eyes full of empathy, not judgment. "Forgiveness is not mine to give alone, Jessica. It is earned through actions, through change. Grandfather's legacy is about building, not burning. If you are willing to truly build, then the path is always open." Jessica, for the first time in her life, started volunteering at the Skills Center, not for show, but with genuine dedication, her designer clothes replaced by practical work attire. The antagonists were not destroyed. They were, in many cases, redeemed, or at least compelled to evolve. Samantha's journey from obscurity was complete. She had become a beacon, a living testament to the power of overlooked virtue, transforming not just an estate, but an entire family and community. One act of integrity at a time. The invisible girl was now undeniably, powerfully, seen. Samantha Cruz, the once invisible cashier, now stood not just as the steward of a vast inheritance, but as the living embodiment of a profound truth. That true worth often resides in the quietest corners, in the unassuming hearts that beat with unwavering kindness and integrity. Her grandfather, Elias Thorne, had orchestrated a masterful final act, not of vengeance, but of transformative justice. He had seen beyond the flashy facades of his other relatives, piercing through their superficiality to recognize the genuine, uncorrupted spirit of his granddaughter. His legacy was not just the accumulated wealth, but the profound moral lesson he had imparted, forcing his family to confront their own greed, their own blindness, and their own neglected potential for good. The Thorne family, once defined by its opulence and internal strife, began to heal, piece by painful piece. Some family members embraced the new ethos, genuinely transforming their lives and finding purpose in contribution. Others faded from prominence, their entitlement rendered meaningless in the face of Samantha's principled leadership. The community of Fresno thrived, benefiting directly from the foundation's outreach, the revitalized factories, and the vocational training that offered pathways to a brighter future. Samantha, despite her immense power and influence, never lost her humility. She remained grounded, her past as the overlooked girl, a constant reminder of the importance of seeing everyone, truly seeing them, regardless of their station or circumstance. She proved that the most profound change doesn't always come from the loudest voices or the grandest gestures, but from the quiet, unwavering commitment to what is right. Her story is a testament to the power of a hidden gem, polished not by outward praise, but by an inner fire of resilience and compassion. It reminds us that often, the people we dismiss, the ones we deem insignificant, are precisely the ones holding the greatest potential, the deepest wells of wisdom, and the purest forms of leadership. They are the quiet observers, the diligent workers, the steadfast souls who carry the weight of unseen burdens with dignity and grace. So, the next time you encounter someone you perceive as ordinary, someone in a seemingly low-status role, someone who seems to blend into the background, I urge you, pause, look closer. Ask yourself if you are truly seeing them, or if you are simply projecting your own biases onto their quiet presence. Remember Samantha Cruz. Remember that true character is often forged in the crucible of invisibility, emerging stronger, purer, and capable of transforming not just a family, but an entire world. The greatest treasures are not always announced with fanfare. Sometimes, they are found in the most unexpected places, patiently waiting to be seen. Let Samantha's story be a reminder to seek out and celebrate the unseen virtues in our own lives, and to never, ever underestimate the quiet ones. Share this story, not just as a tale of inheritance, but as a call to reevaluate how we perceive worth, how we define success, and how we recognize the profound potential that exists within every single human being, especially those who walk among us, quietly, yet with an extraordinary light. Let us learn to truly see.